Hello and welcome back. In this MindMap session today, I'd like to talk about the calculation of the weighted average cost of capital and the various details concerning all of its component parts. So let's get started. Now, a company typically has several alternatives for raising capital, including issuing debt, preferred stock, and common stock. These in turn are referred to as the component costs of capital. Now, the formula itself for the weighted average cost of capital is the percentage of debt in the capital structure multiplied by the rate at which the firm can issue new debt. Note that we adjust the expected before tax cost on new debt financing, KD, by a factor of 1 minus T. This is because in the US and many other tax jurisdictions, the interest on debt financing is tax deductible. The next is the percentage of preferred stock in the capital structure multiplied by the cost of preferred stock. And finally, the weight of common equity multiplied by the cost of common equity. Let's look at each of these in more detail. Firstly, how do we determine what weights to use? The target capital structure of a company is the capital structure that the company is striving to obtain. Ideally, we would know the company's target capital structure and use it to determine the weights of the various components. Oftentimes, however, analysts do not know the target capital structure and must estimate it using one of several alternative approaches. The first alternative is to assume the company's current capital structure at market value weights for the components, including adjustments for any obvious trends in that capital structure. Alternatively, we could use the industry average capital structure, in which we use comparable companies' capital structures as the target capital structure. Next, let's look at debt. As mentioned previously, the cost of debt is the market interest rate or the yield to maturity on new or marginal debt. It is not the coupon rate on the firm's existing debt. Note that we should make appropriate adjustments to the estimated before tax cost of debt to account for debt features such as covenants and seniority. Now, if the market yield to maturity is not available because the firm's debt is not publicly traded, then we would use the debt rating approach, in which we essentially estimate the before tax cost of debt by using the yield on comparably rated bonds for maturities that closely match that of the company's existing debt. The cost of preferred stock, KPS, is DPS over P, where DPS are preferred dividends and P is the market price of preferred stock. The cost of equity capital, or KCE, is the required rate of return on the firm's common stock. This can in turn be estimated in one of three possible ways. The first is the capital asset pricing model approach, or CAPM approach. Here, we estimate the risk-free rate, we estimate the stock's beta, which is a measure of the stock's risk. Next, we estimate the expected rate of return on the market as a whole and derive from that the market risk premium, which is the difference between RM and the risk-free rate, RF. Using the CAPM to estimate the cost of equity is problematic in developing countries because beta does not adequately capture country risk. To reflect this increased risk, we add what is known as a country risk premium to the market risk premium when using the CAPM. Let's take a closer look at the process of estimating beta. Now, typically, in a publicly traded company, we would regress the company's stock returns against market returns to estimate the beta. When we're trying to estimate beta for private companies or atypical projects, we use what's known as the pure play method. To understand this process, we need to be clear that the beta of a company or a project is affected by business risk and financial risk. Of these, financial risk is the uncertainty attributed to the use of financing. So in estimating the beta for private companies or atypical projects requires using a comparable publicly traded company's beta and adjusting it for financial leverage differences between that comparable company and the company or project being analyzed. So as a first step, we find the comparable company and unlever its beta by removing financial risk. What we end up with is also known as asset beta. We then take that asset beta and then use the private company or project's tax rate and capital structure to relever the comparable company's unlevered beta. The second approach for estimating the cost of common equity is known as the dividend discount model. And this is based on the fact that if dividends are expected to grow at a constant rate G, then the current value of the stock equals D1, which is next year's dividend, divided by the cost of common equity minus the firm's expected constant growth rate. Now note that G in turn equals the retention rate multiplied by the return on equity. The difficulty with this model is in estimating the firm's future growth rate. Finally, the bond yield plus risk premium approach is another method of estimating the cost of common equity. This rather ad hoc approach adds a risk premium of 3 to 5 percentage points to the market yield on the firm's long-term debt to arrive at the cost of common equity. So KCE equals bond yield plus a risk premium. I hope you found that mind map useful. Good luck as always, and I'll be back soon with more videos.